Peacock Angel by E.S. Drower, being some account of votaries of a secret cult and their sanctuaries. Chapter 11, The Eve of the Feast. Cease, Sectaria, from thy lamentations. Today refrain from thy dirges. Thou must again bewail him, again must weep for him another year. Beyond Adele 1. Jadon and I were moving down the path between the green hills when the wavering notes of a pipe reached us and the hollow thud of a drum, and we perceived several groups wandering amongst the graves. On the air of the late afternoon, the spicy fragrance of incense was borne towards us, mingling with the perfume of herbs we trod underfoot. We made our way towards the conical shrine of Mokhe Mevran, and, mounting the grassy slope, found a group of women standing round a grave, weeping noisily and beating their breasts or slapping their faces with flat palms to the measure of a plaintive lament played on a wooden pipe, shabab, by one of the qawwals, whilst his partner beat a large circular tambour, daf, the rim of which was set with jingles. After a few minutes, the music ceased. Qawwals moved off, and the women sank down around the grave to continue their weeping and utter half-chanted lamentations, broken by sobbing. At another grave, the same melancholy little melody was being played over and over to the beating of the tambour and the simultaneous thud-thud of the women's hands on their breasts. At each grave that they visited, the qawwals played for about 10 minutes, and when they had done, one of the weeping women slipped money into their hands. Here were no bright festival garments or shining headdresses. These were matrons, or old women, and all wore the white head veil wound over the turban and clothes of somber hue. All about us were groups of mourning women sitting by the graves of their dead. Only the women for whom the qawwals were playing stood. At the head of one grave near us, a woman was chanting a dirge. On most of the graves, bundles had been laid and opened, and we saw that these contained crushed wheat, burkul, and eggs dyed bright orange. One of the mourning women put her hand into the bundle and handed an egg to a boy whom curiosity had drawn thither, and Jadon told me that the food must be distributed to any that pass by, that they may eat and bless the soul of the dead. A pan of incense had been set by many of the graves, and thin spirals of smoke rose into the windless air. On the opposite hills, we could see similar groups of mourners and qawwals moving from grave to grave. The sad plaint of the pipe and throb of the tambour crossed the valley. The tune had a clinging intimacy. A and I were haunted by it for hours. And there's a picture of lamenting women at the tunes. Now, one can talk about influence here, but I don't think this is in any sense necessary to postulate of that sort. And I'm not sure how many sides on the conical spire. On the way home, we passed the lower washing pole and saw women washing, not clothes, but freshly slaughtered meat, for each Yazidi household should sacrifice a lamb or a kid on the eve of the feast. If too poor, a fowl may be substituted, but few go meatless, as the better off distribute to their poor neighbors. And the village washing pool at Bashika, it looks like it has a wall because, but it could be a steep cliff face, or it could have been shaped down a bit. Oh, no, there's an entry. There's a curve a little bit, but that could be a cave too, so I'm not sure. Sairi awaited us at the house, and A had come back from her sketching. The old woman was accompanied by a small girl and had brought us a gift for the feast, 5 colored eggs, which she presented reproachfully. Had I no piece of silk for her? Not even an old gown? Or had I not something for this, my grandchild? I explained once more that we had with us nothing save enough for our traveling needs, but remembering a bright brooch on my pincushion, I fetched it and pinned it to the child's dirty dress. The smile of pure joy which lit up the small face was a reward which the trinket hardly deserved. A gave her a bead against the eye of envy, and I supplemented that gift by writing out for Sarai a brief charm on a piece of paper in Mandaic characters, which she folded up carefully and placed in her dress. Not to be outdone in magic, she mumbled incantations in a hoarse voice over A, beseeching Mariam, mother of 7 children, to bestow upon her 17 babes. Perhaps Jadon had warned her not to prolong her stay, for soon after, when a second visitor arrived, she and her granddaughter departed. It was the very Kawal whom I had seen a little before playing by the tombs. Kawal Rashu, the stump-nosed man who had taken me to the house of the missionary. He now made acquaintance with A and drank tea with us. He had seen me take his photograph when he was beating his tambour, and came to ask me whether I would send him the result. A cheerful and friendly person, he told us that as a younger man he had served in the levies, a force officered by Englishmen and now disbanded, and he evidently considered this a bond between us. When I went, he said, they took me before an officer who asked my name and what I was, and said to me, Rashu, you must cut off your beard. A soldier cannot wear a beard. But I told him I could not because our religion forbids us, Kawals, to cut our hair and a beard. So he took me to another Englishman who asked me many questions about our people, and he allowed me to keep my beard. Now, fascism tends to have the clean-shaven look. Now, not everybody who's clean-shaven is a fascist. They may just be under, the social pressures of fascists. We Kawals travel, he continued, and meet people of all races and religions. And of course, Christianity doesn't allow you to even trim. Not only can you not shave, biblical Christianity doesn't allow the trimming or the rounding of the sides of the hair. Otherwise, we used to take the Sanjak, bronze image of the sacred peacock, as far as Russia and India, as well as about Turkey, Palestine, and Syria. But those days are no more, because all these places now will not let one enter, and passports have become very difficult because of the war. I said that I had not known that there were Yazidis in India. He replied that there were, and also people whose customs were very much like their own. I spoke of the sacred girdle of the Parsis, which is tied at prayer with ablutions, and told him that when a Parsi soldier was in Iraq during the last war and had lost his girdle, he went to a Mandaan priest to weave him another in its place. You Yazidis, too, have a girdle. He replied that the Yazidis, when making their prayer, washed their hands and faces and fastened their girdles, so that in this they resembled the Parsis. But he added, our position in prayer is facing the sun, standing with our hands open and making one prostration to the ground. And by that, I'm not sure that you can necessarily tell them apart, right? But the Parsees don't pray facing this. It becomes a direction, and the moon becomes a direction, and fire, which is in front of you, that can become a direction. So the Yazidis, I guess, are set on one thing. Evening had come. The feast began on the morrow. The Qawwals and mourners had returned to their homes. A and I wandered up the village street and met our player of the reed pipe, who greeted us roguishly. With his hazel eyes clear as pools in a peat bog, and his puckish smile, he might have been Dorian Daphne's, that pipes on his fair flute are, as A suggested, the perfect Peter Pan. The sounds of shepherd pipes, his or another's, was constantly heard on the uplands. Close behind walked a girl with a bunch of scarlet ranunculus in her hair, and a group of women returning, goat skins, paunchy with fresh milk slung over their shoulders, and young kids tucked under their arms. They let us stroke the long-legged, soft-coated creatures with their blunt noses and long silky ears. Thus, we came to the water mill, and entering, talked to the miller. The grain was placed in a hopper, ground between two large stones turned by the stream, which flowed down from Ras Al Ain, and the flour collected from the floor by the miller's wife, who scooped it up with her hands and placed it in a nearby filled sack. We also yielded to the importunities of our neighbors, the police, who took us over to the police station, showing with pride the well-kept stables and saddle room and photographs of local criminals and wanted men. Examining these carefully, A and I decided that a number of these looked like apostles. It was probably the effect of the beard and headdress. I remember being horrified when I saw Dr. Henry Field's anthropological photographs of men who had looked saintly and pictorial in their kepiyehs, headkerchiefs, and agals, fillets of twisted rope. Without the flattering headdress, a Moses was suddenly transformed into a criminal, lunatic, a Saint John the Baptist into a Bowery crook. Night had fallen, and when we had dined, we strolled out to look with fresh interest at the shrine of Sheikh Mohammed, and wondered what really went on there during the second night of the feast, regretting that we should never know, since all the wiseacres of the place had declared that it was impossible for any but Yazidis to be present. And so, almost as expectant of the morrow as the Yazidis themselves, we returned to bed.